Good evening, Mr. Bond fans, and welcome once again to another Bond fan debate video. This time we're going to be talking about A View to a Kill, and as always, we're going to be looking to you, the viewer, to comment below with your thoughts on the film, as well as who you think has the greater case in this debate. I have a feeling I know how this is going to go, and I'm the defender, so that's how confident I am here. I'm Calvin, and with me is Mr. David Zaritsky of the Bond Experience. How are you, David?
I am doing great. I so look forward to these, and this bumps up to a weekend. So I couldn't think of a better entry into the weekend.
Oh, nice. No, I'm already, I've got my usual vodka and Coke Zero here. So this is truly the start of my weekend.
That is the strangest drink. I've heard of rum and Coke, but like clear liquids like a vodka or a gin and Coke, that's a patented drink for you, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, no. Is it not common over in the States? I feel like it's quite a known thing here, vodka and
No,
Coke.
somebody would think that you would already been drinking, I think. But I'm willing to try it. Is it tasty?
It is tasty, yeah, yeah. It's not, if you have the Grey Goose, then it's, that. I
Well,
mean, you
Grey
can't get
Goose
better
is
than
like
that,
tasteless. Yeah. So
yeah.
it just takes on whatever it is. It's like tofu of vodka, Grey Goose. Takes on whatever taste you put in. No, bottoms up. That's fantastic. I have,
Chin chin.
because it is 10:30 in the morning when we're recording this, I have my wonderful water with some lemon in it. How boring.
We're gonna have to do one of these records one day where it's like midnight here and then like 7 p.m. where you are, so you can start drinking as well. And
Or on a weekend, because I'll day drink all day long. Rosé all day.
excellent, excellent, love it. Okay, so we are here talking about A View to a Kill this time. I'm gonna take on the role of defender of this film, and I should probably confess right up front, this is one that has often gone like up and down in my rankings. I think when I last did a ranking video, it was actually towards the bottom.
20.
Um, oh, you know this?
I may do a little research before our debates. Debates are won before the debate. You know that.
But in the previous ranking video that I did, this one ranked much higher for me. And it was, I remember we talked about this in one of the previous ones where we watch the film and then we come to this discussion and you're sort of like wondering like, will my opinion be consistent with, well, the role that I want to play in this debate? And I was going into this thinking like, what if I don't like it that much on revisiting it this time? But I really did get an awful lot out of it this time coming to it.
Nice.
So what was your experience coming to it again? Is it still like way down the bottom of your list?
Well, I guess if we kind of put it like this, was it like dragging my naked honey-covered body through broken glass? It wasn't quite that bad. Look, and I want to say up front to everybody that's ready to send me poison pen letters, you and I have talked about this before. The worst Bond film is still some of my favorite films. So watching A View to a Kill was not a displeasure. And, there were moments where, and this is kind of the one word that I find for it, I just find it a little dull. And, the problem is that almost any movie I watch before it or after it is just better. And so, you've got these very interesting, intriguing, and we'll talk about them, I'm sure, action scenes. And then you've got this exposition, which is just kind of dull. And the other thing that I really noticed this time, Calvin, I've got to tell you, you've got these plot points. And at first, I have to tell you, the first 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I'm like, this is a pretty good film. Like when he's like doing the action scenes with him skiing. And then, of course, the Beach Boys. And then I'm like, oh, that's right. It's this film. But I found some plot points very intriguing. But here's what I found. There's 3 different plot points in this movie, and they all go nowhere. So you've got a plot point about, and I've got my first prop to show you. We've got this, I don't even know if this will show up on camera, but you've got this
amazing
pendant. Yeah, this has got everything. It's got the picture in it. It's got the little
microchip.
The microchip. So you've got this microchip that can take and resist electromagnetic pulse. That's kind of interesting. And it traces back to Zorin. But they never use the electromagnetic pulse thing ever again. Then you've got these types of things, where you've got the whole horse race with the injector, and you've got this fascinating thing when he's dressed. I hope you noticed, I dressed up like Roger Moore today with his tracksuit and everything like that, his Fila tracksuit. And then the horse thing never goes anyplace. It's just almost like exposition for like Zorn's thing, which is more like, Operation Grand Slam.
Mm.
Oh, I'm sorry, is it Operation Grand Slam or is it the Goldfinger plot of irradiating gold and destroying microchips? So I don't know. I really had problems with the story and the plot points having loose ends everywhere this time around.
Oh no, I mean I think you're totally right. It's definitely, I find this with quite a few of the 80s Bond films in particular. There is so much going on in there. Like I think we have it with Octopussy and the Living Daylights as well, where there is so many different plot strands, and sometimes it kind of comes together, and like even in Octopussy it's like, the egg is kind of forgotten about and we kind of move along with the other aspects of the plot, but it works a lot better than I think here. I must say, like, there's a lot of KGB sort of interference that I thought was really unnecessary. I know they originally wanted Anya from The Spy Who Loved Me to come back and play the Polar Ivanova part in A View to a Kill, and obviously that didn't happen. If that did happen, that would be really cool, but without that, it is just this strange little tangent off to the side, and it's a bit meandering and all over the place, but there is we're going to go into more details, but kind of broadly, I think the thing that I love about this film, and it's similar to Diamonds Are Forever in this respect, there is a weirdness to it. Like, it's really, and I think a lot of it comes from Walken and Grace Jones, who are just bizarre choices for villains. I think both of them are excellent. We're going to talk about them in more detail, but I think that there is just something so weirdly camp and surreal about aspects of it that just kind of carries me through, and I'm happy to overlook some of the more egregious plot details as a result.
I'm looking forward to really digging into you, because I couldn't help but walk away. The film was ending, and this will be my last kind of generality before we get into details. And I couldn't help but thinking it felt like one of these made for TV movies that happen 20 years after a TV series ends, like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the return from The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And they got Roger Moore back out of retirement, and they said, something would be fun. We stopped the Bond movies 20 years ago, but what if we had a TV movie? And, it was called A View to a Kill. And, we've got some 4 or 5 action scenes, and we have a loose plot, and we'll just put it all together. It felt like that to me.
I see where you're coming from with that, and I do wonder if a big part of that is down to the setting. Like, this is very much, a big chunk of it is set in San Francisco, and I think for the most part, Bond films, even though you can tell when they're set by the style of the clothes, the gadgets, the watches, the phones, all that kind of stuff, this one feels like so much more like aggressively 80s to me than any other of the Bond films of the 80s. And I think it's, it's about microchips, which was about Silicon Valley, like this kind of very 80, and Q has this little like robot dog thing, which feels just like it feels so of its time. And with the setting, with San Francisco being such a, I don't know, a Western location, it's not like, when Bond is going around the Mediterranean in For Your Eyes Only, or in India in Octopussy, it has a kind of timelessness to it. And maybe that just comes from my unfamiliarity with those locations.
And I was almost craving, if you're going to do something about the 1980s, like, oh my gosh, Silicon Valley and microchips, of course, and robots and all these things. And when they pixelated Bond, I mean, it was really about the 80s. Bump it up to the next level. Like, I feel like other movies, like even, my gosh, Superman 3, for goodness sakes, used computers and digitization so much better. Like, they didn't use a lot of that. They didn't have anybody, they never got to Silicon Valley, strangely enough, like nothing like that. So it's like, I felt like if you're going to do that, go to the hilt with it. And they still didn't do that. And it shows. It just doesn't feel like no one feels like they're committed in this film.
I kind of like it in that way, because again, it contributes towards this weird feeling that the film has, and we're going to get on to talking about one of the first points that I want to cover is Bond himself. I want to like throw us in at the deep end here in this discussion, because a part of the thing that I love about this film is this aggressive 80s-ness. It feels very much like it's trying to be set in this time period. It's bringing on, very contemporary things from the time it was being made, and it's trying to be like, it has A View to a Kill at the front of it, this really young, hip sounding song. It has Grace Jones and Christopher Walken in it, very young, energized actors. And then you have Roger Moore coming back in his late 50s now at this point. And I should point out that I don't know if anyone is ever too old to play James Bond. But if they can't embody a lot of the physicality of the role, and they just can't sell you on that aspect of it, then I think that's where the problem arises, because Roger Moore is quite clearly being doubled throughout most of this film, and he's even like small, like running along a street or something, it's quite clearly another man doing it. He's not having to run more than 3 paces, and that believability is kind of lost. I think there's a charm to it, but again, watching this, because of these discussions, I'm looking out for things like, what will David be talking about? Why doesn't David like this film, and all that kind of stuff? And I think I think it's similar to You Only Live Twice in a way, because it is a Bond film where the Bond is not operating at full capacity, I would say. Do you agree with that?
Yes, and I'll put 100 on 10. So this time around, I will tell you, I fought the cliche of going after the ageism of Roger Moore, because it's what everybody goes to. It's what
Yep.
actually during this movie, when it came out, and even while it was being filmed, a lot of reporters were very cruel to Roger Moore. Just very cruel, and he was kind of self-deprecating, his whole humor. And if you watch interviews, it's really fascinating to see him. A reporter, I think, asks him, what are they saying about you, Roger? And he goes, they're saying, oh, there's old Roger again, with this cane. But I will say a couple of things about this. I love Roger in anything. I love him in a commercial. It doesn't matter. And so, I look at him, and it's hard. It's almost like looking at your child and finding fault with their singing. But there were a couple things that disturbed me. Clearly he had his mole removed, which to me was just kind of like, my gosh, it's like, it's a part of him, literally. And then it looks like, although it was denied, he had some sort of eye work, and it just seemed a little off to me. And I'm very conscious, being in the medical industry, of being able to see those things, even though people are in denial. And it seemed like they were really trying hard. They put him in a Fila tracksuit, which nowadays a Fila tracksuit is for mob bosses. But during that time, it was for rappers and for young people. And they try to do so much to surround him with youngness, Stacey Sutton youngness, Mayday, who's played by a pop star who was very hip and young. The posters who, de-aged him and made him thin, like Live and Let Die. And, the problem is that I'm so used to and love with the Roger Moore from Live and Let Die, who's cool and suave and dressed perfectly. And I wasn't getting this Bond. I was getting Roger Moore macking as Roger Moore playing James Bond. So I had to go through all these filters, to get to the James Bond character, which I didn't get that in many of the previous movies. And by the way, even Octopussy. I revisited Octopussy after you and Joe have kind of crammed it down my throat. Crammed is harsh. And I love that movie now. I truly do love it. And it has a lot of soul and heart. I feel like this didn't. And I feel like Roger was kind of like maybe halfway through conscious, like maybe I came back for one too many. And so although I love the serious moments, he does serious so well in this film, the other moments they just fall flat. And then the action, they didn't even try to disguise. You see these young, talented stunt actors. It's clearly not him, not even close. And then, it's all like close and blue screen. And even the skiing scene, I think they did like 1 or 2 shots of him, and everything else is just, it's not him. So I want Bond films to escape with me and take me out of the realm of reality. And it couldn't do it for me. He couldn't do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It's weird, because it's like in Octopussy, there are moments, I'm fully aware that Roger Moore is not going to get on top of a train and like run along it when it's doing like 40 miles an hour. That's obviously a stunt person. And yet you are kind of drawn into believing that. The film sells you on the idea that this could actually happen. Whereas in A View to a Kill, it's almost like in some places they don't even try to hide it. Like when the car splits in half and you can just see that it's, someone else in a wig. It's Remy Julien, isn't it? I believe. Yeah. And it, I mean, that doesn't help. There is a kind of it feels a little lazy compared to maybe the previous couple. And I don't know if there was, just an attitude of getting the band back together again. And I don't think it's Roger's fault that, I wish that I mean, A View to a Kill is one of the films that I really wish had just been tweaked ever so slightly to kind of play into the fact that maybe in a similar way to what, like, Daniel Craig did with Skyfall, but with Daniel Craig, it came way before his time,
You,
really. Whereas with
you,
Roger, yeah.
you said something so profound, and I was like air punching. It was so profound in one of your early reviews of this movie, where you said you wish that they had embraced his age,
Mm,
put women, closer to his age, put situations. And I couldn't help but think, honestly, this could possibly be in my top 10 if
mm,
they had done that. Because if they had smoothed out the plot lines, if they had made the action less porn-like, meaning
mm.
action for action's sake, and just had this really good, kind of interesting storyline, and we'll get to the bad guys, how they could have cemented that, you'd have a Roger Moore James Bond that I think it would have been one of the best, because I don't mind an older James Bond.
Mm.
But there's this one part when he's in Stacey Sutton's ancestral home where he has a shotgun and he does this Wesley Snipes blade-like flip. I mean, he literally just goes like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I'm thinking to myself, somebody 30 years old would have removed their spine by doing that. Don't do that. Like, just have him like move the shotgun, be like John Wick, be
Mm,
like, the movie Taken, where you have older gentlemen doing older gentlemen skills.
mm.
And people would have loved that, but it just seems so nonsensical. And I know you like an offbeat, weird, bombastic type thing, but this just really took me out of any type of realm of believability.
Oh yeah, totally. Believability is not there. I'm still
Yeah.
having a good time with it because I think there is some charm to, the fact that
Mm.
he is like going through the things that he's been doing for like what, 12 years at this point, and they
Yeah.
haven't really changed it all that much. And they're kind of aging up the people around him. Like he has, Sir Godfrey Tibbett is his brilliant ally in this film, Patrick McNee, who I absolutely love, and the interplay between those two is just so perfect. They're obviously friends off camera as well. All of the MI6 regulars, like when they all go to the horses, Lois Maxwell is back for her last Moneypenny scene,
Yeah.
which is really lovely. But it is just this strange juxtaposition of all of these people at MI6 who've been here for so long at this point, and then the villains who are very young, very hip, very quite stylish, really.
Yes.
Well, shall we talk about the villains, because they are my
Absolutely.
absolute high point of this film. Christopher Walken and Grace Jones are phenomenal in their parts. I think they bring so much personality of their own kind of off-camera persona to the parts, and it's the kind of roles where if you hadn't have cast people as interesting as these two, it wouldn't have worked, I don't think. But how do you feel about them?
I think so I have an interesting take on this. I think they are my
Okay.
high point and my low point. So my high point is Christopher Walken is fantastic. You know, um, first of all, a very accomplished actor. Does incredible things with scenes.
Mm,
Very much like Christoph Waltz in Spectre. I
mm,
don't think they gave him enough. I
mm,
think that, the times with Bond, there's not enough tete-a-tete. There could have been incredible exposition. I think Roger Moore is actually a very good actor. And so
mm,
the two of them could have had these really great scenes, more than just, sitting at a computer and evaluating his past through digitization and, little moments like that, or, the Zeppelin at the end. But I wanted more from him. I wanted him to be like a Goldfinger, or like in Skyfall, that type of a bad guy where you're
mm,
like really gravitating to him. And they set up this whole thing where, he's maniacal and he's more evil and he's been, bred through Nazi ingenuity. They just don't do anything with him. I mean, they have this one crazy kind of machine gunning at the end, but outside of that, you really don't get a sense of that. And I thought it was an interesting choice how this is one of the first times where you have the bad guy, and I know he was a KGB agent, or maybe
mm,
still is to the KGB, but he kind of does his own like hired hand type stuff. Like
mm.
he's got Mayday as a henchman, but he goes out on a mission. He goes to San Francisco to burn the building down himself. He checks out Bond himself. Like he doesn't have all these henchmen. He kind of like he's a do-it-yourself type guy. So I love the character. I love the actor. I wanted more, excuse the pun.
Mm.
And then Mayday, she's the highlight of this film.
Oh, brilliant! Yes.
Her fashion, her zaniness. I love when they're sitting in, she goes off the Eiffel Tower and she, gets into the boat with him. And then he's just kind of laughing like a normal person. And then she goes, and she starts like slapping herself. I'm like, what the actual F is this? But
Yeah.
she is just fantastic in this film. I love her hands down.
I completely agree. She's phenomenal, and just in these weird like little choices, because I know like she's very much a pop star first and maybe an actress second, but just there are little moments like I love that bit where she's like on top, where Zorin is like on top of her and they're kind of making out, or they're doing the exercise thing, and she's just
Yep.
like biting at him, and then the phone goes and he gets up and she just like spins over and she like rolls her eyes and then
Yeah.
gets up. It's just these nice little poses in there that just really bring so much. And the style, like I love the sunglasses that she puts
Oh,
on, where it's like I think she designed those herself, did she not?
they asked her to be like to bring her own style to it, and you can
Right.
definitely tell. Even the introduction when she's in the Eiffel Tower, you could
Yeah.
tell that it's kind of, oh, whoa, I'm sorry, what the heck. I apologize.
Run
You know what it
away.
is? I had left the window open. This is not good. uh, Give me one.
Be careful, David. Be
Sorry.
careful.
Get ugh, sorry about that. um but
uh,
but even those moments, I loved how she chewed up the scenes, and
mm.
she just owned her moments for sure.
And I love that by the end of it, like when she ultimately sacrifices herself and comes over to Bond's side, like when she like gets blown up on the thing at the end, saving the day, more than Bond really in this particular adventure.
Yeah.
I think it's quite something to say that we're totally with her, or at least I am in that moment. Like I'm sorry to see her go. I think she's great. And earlier on in the film, she killed my other favorite character in Sir Godfrey
Oh,
Tibbet. So
yeah.
like she killed such like a lovely presence in the film, and I should really hate that character for that. She's done terrible things, and yet I'm still sort of like quite sympathetic for her when she dies. It's crazy to have that level of the
Her arc
shift
is
from
amazing. Her
yeah.
arc is real. Like I totally bought into it when, when the mines are getting flooded and she
Mm,
sees Jenny Flex, floating body, and she goes, Jenny. Like
yeah.
she's arguably one of the best actors of this film through that, because you really believe there's been kind of a linchpin switch with her.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just touching on that scene as well, because I think it's the scene where we see Max Zorin go kind of beyond like what most Bond villains have to that point, where he's kind of like mowing down like plenty of, obviously these miners are working towards his goal, but they are
Yeah.
relatively like innocent people. They're just like showing up and doing their job, whatever the manager's telling them to do.
Yeah.
And we have this protracted scene of the villain just massacring them. And I know that Roger Moore himself was not a fan of that
No.
scene in particular. And I know it does rub a lot of Bond fans up the wrong way, and I can see why, because it is gratuitous violence for gratuitous violence sake. But there is something that I kind of love about it, because it makes Zorin such a horrible character.
Yeah. Oh, I don't mind it at all when he did it, because it reminds me of Xenia Onatop, when she's sitting
Right.
there in Goldeneye and she's,
Mm,
almost having an orgasm. She's loving this. And this is what this guy Zorn has been bred for. It's like, if anything, he seems almost out of place within the horse surrounding. He seems much
mm.
more in place, within the mines and the Zeppelin and things like that, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. And speaking of Zeppelin,
Oh,
should we talk about Stacey Sutton, who cannot famously outrun a Zeppelin?
yes. Yes, we should.
Yeah, who I think she gets, again, she's just one of these elements in this thing that it is weird that just her and Roger Moore, I think Roger Moore has chemistry with almost anyone. Like he's such an
Yeah.
affable guy, like on screen you just get a sense of a relationship between him and another person. I feel like his default when he comes up, and I think it's similar with Melina in For Your Eyes Only as well, his default is to go almost like fatherly with them, because they are so much younger than him. And I think he has a certain self-awareness that he famously jokes about, this was the film where I think he realized that he was older than one of the actress's mothers was, and he was
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable playing this part anymore. But I wish that they'd lent more into that sort of sage-like, father-like figure. It's a little bit weird whenever they have to have a romantic scene. I think that they work quite well as a double act throughout much of it when she's not screaming. But
Yeah.
for most of it, like when they're going investigating the mine together, I actually quite like them together. How do you feel?
Oh. Well, in due respect to obviously Tanya Roberts, who passed
Mm,
away. Well, first of all, I didn't get a fatherly feeling with Roger and the women because
mm.
that first one in the iceberg is like 20 years old when he unzips her jumpsuit, and I don't think he's buying Girl Scout cookies from her for 5 days. And the one in the bathtub, considerably younger, KGB agent, no problem there. But then you've got Stacey Sutton. The problem I have with Stacey Sutton is all of her lines seem to lack conviction. There was
Mm.
one reviewer that actually said she seems confused about where she is or what this or what it means. In fact, there was this one thing where she's trying to explain, they're in the mines, she's all dressed up like Bond, and she's trying to explain like what's going to possibly happen. And
Yeah.
she almost like seems like she's asking a question. She's like, so the thing's going to blow up and then they're going to get flooded here in the mine. And I'm like, you're not doing that, are you? But yeah, I thought besides the James thing and everything like that, it was a bad portrayal, a bad character, and I'm not a fan of it at all.
I think I very much used to be of that, and I've really come around to her. And I think in a similar way to the fact that I've come around to Denise Richards as Christmas Jones quite a
We need
lot.
to end this right now. What? All right, we'll get to that.
No, I really have. I know that there is you know, maybe the actresses don't sell some of the technical dialogue as well as, or with enough conviction as would be adequate. But again, I think there's just some kind of charm to it. I think there's some kind of zaniness to it.
It
And
is.
like I say, I don't like it when she's sort of making eyes at Roger across the dinner table after they've had their 2 bottles of wine and quiche, which is a ridiculous amount to consume.
Delicious.
And she's having like cheese and biscuits afterwards, which is
Yeah.
like all that dairy and red wine. I dread to think what the next morning is going to be like for both of them. But
Well, and what do we ever figure out? All right, so I've got like the Zorn check that he makes out to her.
ah,
Feels like that whole horse race visit to the palace was literally
mm,
to introduce Stacy. And then I think, well, she better be one hell of a core, strong character. And
mm.
just for me, it was. But I'm glad you enjoyed her.
Well, I do like as well with this film. It's like we have our main sort of like Bond girl, villain, henchman, like all like in the film in the first like what 20 minutes or something like that,
Yeah.
which is quite something for a Bond film. I like that they carry through the whole thing and they're all there until the end, which is quite nice because sometimes the Bond girl or main villain might not be introduced until midway through the film. Just on your point about loose tangents, something that really stuck out to me actually this time watching the film is that whole sequence where Bond goes to the Eiffel Tower to meet with Monsieur Aubergine, and we have the
Yes.
butterfly thing and Mayday parachutes off. All a great sequence, and probably my favorite action sequence in the film. You don't really need it. Like, I'm surprised.
No.
I wonder if it was there because they felt like they needed to have action there. Maybe France would only give them permission to film there if they, made a point of their biggest tourist attraction and all that kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
don't actually know enough about the behind the scenes to answer that. But that whole sequence, particularly because we have, and this is really bad writing. I mean, this is the worst kind of writing where you have Mayday, like when she sees Bond in disguise at the stables, and she's like, I recognize him from somewhere. Where have I seen him before? And that's such bad plotting when you're just like, have a character just conveniently forget that they've seen another character.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, she's like, oh, I remember. I saw him at the Eiffel Tower. And it's like,
There's
oh,
a heart thumping chase. How do you forget that?
yeah. How do you forget the man that you attacked with a fishing line
Yeah.
on the
But
Eiffel
it's
Tower?
guilty of a lot of that. So I
Mm,
felt like the fire scene, and I was just waiting for the James of the fire scene, in town hall. But honestly, I thought it was pretty good and it was tense. I like that it's tense.
mm.
But then they tacked on the whole fire engine, truck
Oh yeah.
scene. Goofy madcap James Bond is back with the Keystone Cops who don't trust him, and it's like, wait a minute, what? Like, and why would the cop say, James Bond, yeah, I'm Sherlock Holmes. Like, all
Mm,
of that just seems absolutely gratuitous. And I would go so far that, to me, the only authentic and supportable action scene is probably one of the most subtle, and it's where James Bond is dressed to ride, and he
mm.
rides with Zoran, and all those obstacles and things like that. And you've got Bond kind of like sitting there, like going down, and he's like smashing into everybody and smashing into everybody. And to
Oh,
me,
nice.
that was so exciting because it was like it felt real to me, but the other stuff just feels tacked on.
No, yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. It is so contrived to just get these action sequences in there. And even when I'm in them, like I was thinking about this, like Bond films so often have like put an extra twist on an action scene, or there's like one key stunt or something
Mm,
that, and I think all of that Paris stuff with Mayday jumping off the Eiffel Tower and the car getting like split in two and all that kind of stuff, that's really nice and that feels very Bondian. For so many of the other action sequences in the film, I don't feel like they really have much of a Bondian
yep.
twist on things. It does just feel like, okay, they're on a fire truck and it's kind of swinging around. And I do really like that scene because I like some of the gags. I like Roger Moore sort of like, whoa, as he's like spinning around and kicking hats off people. And I love a comedic sheriff in a Bond film, a comedic head of police, whatever San Francisco has as their chief of.
As I hear what you're saying, I'm also feeling really warm and secure in this debate because defender as you may be, I keep seeing that number 20 and it's being supported by your own words because it's like you do have a lot of issues. I think you like the madcap aspects of that, but
Mm.
the sum of the parts don't equal the whole possibly as a Bond film, but I know we have a lot more to go.
Oh yeah, we really do. And like I say, this more than any other Bond film flips up and down in my rankings.
Hmm.
Like I say in my previous ranking video, I think it was maybe like 13. It was like in the top half of kind of the thing for me. And God, I hate to say this, but I think like time of day really helps when you're watching a film like this as well. I watched this first thing this morning. I got out of bed and I watched it at like while I was having
Oh,
my breakfast and my coffee and stuff. And as a kind of, and I know maybe this is a ding against the film because maybe a Bond film shouldn't be like a cozy thing to watch in a morning. It should be an entertainment for the evening or whatever. But I do get a lot out of it when I'm just like when it's just on in an afternoon on like a weekend or something like that.
yeah.
It's I have a different experience with it when I see it like that than if I'm like watching on a Friday evening or something with some
Yeah.
drinks when I maybe want something a bit more high octane.
So it's like a Saturday morning cartoon as opposed to Friday evening with your partner because
Mm.
you're sitting there chewing your nails like I can't believe I put this Bond film on for my partner who can only just sort of stand Bond. I mean, I'd be nervous to put this on for Danielle.
I must say, like, I don't know if you get this as well, but every now and then people will ask me, like, for recommendations on, like, oh, I'm really trying to get my boyfriend or girlfriend into James Bond. Like, can you give me some recommendations about, like, films? This would be towards the bottom. This is no one's starter Bond film.
Okay. That tells you something right there.
But I
I
think
feel
that
pretty secure.
well, you know what? I think that this film has a real strong fan base these days, and this is why I was surprised that you were
Yeah.
quite it was quite low in your rankings actually, because I wondered if you'd be one of those people where it came a bit higher. I see an awful lot of people defending this film these days, and I don't know if it's because people have a lot of nostalgic memories for it or
Hmm.
whatever, but or maybe it is just one of the kind of we all like to sort of be nice to the the
The
lame
underdog.
dog. Yeah, the underdog, yeah.
Oh no, no, no! I think it's 100% the underdog. I will tell
Mm,
you, my love and appreciation for Quantum of Solace is spurred on. It's fueled by the
mm,
fact that so many people don't like it.
yeah.
I'm just wondering if shortly soon I'll be falling back in love with Spectre and Die Another Day. Who knows? But probably not. I I definitely think it's that, and I think that it's almost like if you saw somebody picking on somebody in a schoolyard, it's that heroic sense of I'm going to get my ass kicked, but I'm going to go attack that bully. So
Yeah.
you're attacking me as the bully in this fight against a view to a kill. I get it.
All right. Well, shall we talk about the rest of the supporting cast? Because we've already
Hmm.
touched on Sir Godfrey Tibbett, Patrick McNee, who I absolutely love. How do you feel
Love.
about? Oh, right. Cool. Okay. Yeah.
No, 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 no. He could do no wrong.
Yeah.
First of all, his voice, which he's a voiceover guy. He was the narrator for Battlestar Galactica.
Oh.
The even the James Bond, they had a making of special. He does a lot of the DVDs.
Yeah.
His voice is so good, but he's just so elegant. I mean, to me,
Mm,
he smacks of that Bond partner and compadre, and I love I love the partnership between him and Moore, as his kind of butler and valet, and like, do we really need to keep this up in his
yeah.
own rights? I think he's fantastic, and I have to say, when he got killed this time, I knew it was happening, But like as soon as he throws the dirty water on Cubby Broccoli's Rolls Royce, I'm like, oh no, like he's gonna be dead soon. Like I kind of felt really bad. I loved him.
Oh, cool. I
Yeah.
really love that character as well. Like I like that he's not like an agent as such. He's just kind of like a
Mm,
specialist who helps MI6 out with these things,
yeah.
and he's just kind of along with Bond. So he's not an agent as such. He's just a person with a very specialist knowledge who can be of use to Bond on this thing. And that kind of adds to some of the sadness about when he's ultimately killed, because it's like, okay, he doesn't feel like he's an espionage bloke. He's kind of drafted in
Yeah.
to help with this particular mission. And I really like that. But I love all of the like it's some of my highlights with him and Bond like bickering, and
Yes.
he comes and panting and wheezing with the things, and Bond's like, "Oh, let me help you unpack," and he just pulls out the umbrella. I love all of that stuff.
I have a theory, Calvin. I want to test on you.
Mm?
So my theory is, obviously, he and Moore have history. They were in a Sherlock Holmes movie, and obviously
Uh,
he was part of the Avengers. But I think they cast him to make Roger Moore look more fit and younger. In fact, when they go down, kind of the Pegasus elevator
yeah.
into the place where everything's being wrapped up, and they have that little fight there with the guys, which is so slapsticky. If you watch that scene, um, Tibbet is just doing terrible. I mean, he's not an agent; he's getting his butt kicked, and it really makes Roger Moore look, like Wesley Snipes from Blade, like
Yeah.
more. So it was that comparison. I think they did that to kind of have that, hey, let's kind of bring more up a little bit on a pedestal.
You know what? I've never considered it for him, but I think you're right there. They certainly do it with some of the blokes that he has to like fight with. Like they certainly
Mm,
cast like older stunt people, and in that scene they do it where him and Tibbet are
yeah.
fighting underneath the stables. They do it later on with the guys who come into Stacy's home as well.
Yes.
And Roger Moore's like, totally charming and self-deprecating about this kind of stuff. I think he even talks about in one of the behind the scenes on the DVD where he's like, yeah, they did have to keep on like aging up the heavies in the film so that I could, conceivably beat them in a fight. Which it feels weird because coming after Octopussy, it it's so strange that this only comes 2 years after Octopussy, where he still feels like
Yeah.
revitalized and young, and it doesn't feel like they're making compromises or excuses for his age, whereas all of a sudden they are. I think you're actually onto something when you mentioned earlier on about this feels like a reunion special, like 20 years down the line or whatever. It does
Yeah.
feel like an awful lot of time has passed between this and Octopussy when it actually really hasn't.
It hasn't. And then, some of the ancillary characters like, Q being back and,
Mm,
Miss Moneypenny. And it's so nice and charming. I think that's the right word to use
mm,
here. Charming and nostalgic to see Miss Moneypenny. Obviously, to me, Miss Moneypenny, even in Dr. No, was never supposed to be the head turner, gams, that type of Bond girl, type person. So I think she plays a great role here. But even the Q scene, I think love Q, of course. I love Desmond Llewellyn, but like even like some of the gadgets are a little bit more generational, like a higher generation. Like, all right, so he gets a sharper image credit card that's a lockpick. I mean, that's like the big thing, which is something that older people tend to have a lot of like credit cards, for no reason and discount cards and coupons. And it's like, so this is Bond's big thing. It's like, that's his big gadget. It's like, and then he's got the giant sunglasses.
I
God
do
love
hate
them.
those.
Oh my gosh. Like I'm just staring at a window, just, fixing my glasses here. La dee dee dee. The gadgets are pretty bad.
uh I'm trying to think if I can defend that. I don't think I can. I think you're
Good.
on. I think
Don't
you've.
try.
I think that is definitely one for you. I think those are some of my least favorite gadgets in the thing. Those glasses with the really obvious, like adjuster things that he has to, and the fact that it's also that the glare of a window disappears so he can see through it. It's like it's such a.
Sexy. Yeah.
It's such a non-gadget. It's not like it's X-ray glasses or something like that, where it's like this
Yeah.
kind of cool feature. It's just so like, yeah, I don't know.
You know what my favorite gadget moment is not a gadget moment. I have to
Mm,
explain. It's when just it's ingenuity. It's he's an older spy. It's when he goes in to his room in the chateau,
mm,
and they're talking, and he turns on the recorder, just a simple recorder, and they
yeah.
continue to have the conversation, and they go out on the balcony. That type of ingenuity and finding the bugs, to me, that's like Dr. No and Thunderball. It's like just using your head and brains.
Yeah. Um, can I ask you about the
Go.
locations? Because this is a film that is so much set in the US. And like I know that you don't live in San Francisco. Me as a Londoner, like when I watch something like Skyfall or The World's Not Enough, I do get quite a kick out of so much Bond action being set in in the country that I live in.
Yeah.
Do you have that with Bond when he is in the States? Do you have that with Live and Let Die, for instance, when he's in New York?
I had it with Live and Let Die in New
Mm,
York because I'm a New Yorker. So
right.
it's less about the country and much more for us, I think, is about, hey, that's my state. And I know that place so well. And I
Mm,
certainly didn't have it with Goldfinger in Kentucky and things like that at all. And I really didn't have it in San Francisco. I've been to San Francisco a lot
mm,
for business and for pleasure. And I know every one of those locations, but it didn't give me a rise. If anything, and I have to be frank, it almost kind of cheapened it. It's
mm.
almost like, I don't think of San Francisco, as nice as it is, and it's beautiful, as an exotic location because I am from the States. New York, there's something about the excitement and vibe of New York, having Bond in New York, which was a very Fleming thing, that
Mm,
I do get a rise out of. Bond in Kentucky, not so much, but it served the story. But
yeah.
Bond in San Francisco, no. And Paris, as nice as Paris was in the chateau, it honestly felt a little self-serving. Like I know Cubby Broccoli was really into horse racing and horses, and Paris is of course very nice, and it is exotic to somebody here in Pennsylvania. But it was okay. But honestly, I think the most exotic location was the icebergs.
Yeah.
Like to me, that was the most kind of crazy cool moment of the whole movie.
You really want to spend more time in that location. The whole pre-credits thing, it looks really cool. And like, knowing about some of the production stuff, it was like in
Mhm.
Iceland and it was a big
Yeah,
icy lake and they had to like abandon some of the like camera equipment on
yeah.
icebergs because they might flip over at any point. Like really cool space. And I don't know if there are some shots in it that look kind of fakey to me. Some of it looks like it could be matte paintings or model shots or something. And I know that they obviously used like a small helicopter to blow up and all that kind of stuff. But I do wish that they'd spent much more time there. I think it would have
Yeah.
been, yeah,
How
really
did you
cool.
feel about the locations? I mean, do you look at San Francisco and go, hmm? I mean, what are your feelings?
Well, I have been to San Francisco in the past, like 12 years ago now on like a family holiday. So it's been a long time since I've been there. Um, I it dates the film. I think it goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier on about, and I don't know if it's because in this film in particular, even when Bond's in like London in Skyfall, he's not like out in public buildings and on the streets that much. He's underground, he's in areas that you don't often see. You do feel like he is in these areas that are kind of off limits to the public, whereas in this film he's in like public buildings, he's out on the streets of Fisherman's Wharf, all that kind of stuff, and that feels weird because
Hmm.
that just contextualizes it. You can see the shops and the restaurants and stuff that obviously make it of the time that it is, and even in the fire truck chase kind of going around. So but I think that also has an awful lot of charm to it because it
Hmm.
is a Bond film that's so set in a specific time. Like this
Yeah.
movie had to be 1985, whereas
Yeah.
some of the other ones around it maybe are a bit more timeless. But I think that kind of adds to its charm.
From a location standpoint, you and I are coming off of discussions like, you only live twice in Japan, and places from Russia with Love took
Yeah,
you to, and it's like, San Francisco, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna talk about another point now. Bring up another
Yeah.
point rather. The score, like the John Barry music, because I know this is somewhat polarizing. I know some people
Oh.
really hate the kind of the melodic "A View to a Kill" that's put through the
Oh.
film. I love it. Like, I think the score seems mainly split into kind of like there's an awful lot of melodic instrumental "A View to a Kill," the title theme through it for like romantic moments and the like. And then there's kind of this like action theme, which is this bum 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 bum, and
Yeah.
it has this kind of like nice march sort of feel to it, which I
Yeah.
really love. How do you feel about it? This is one of my go-to Bond CDs. Actually, I listen to this soundtrack quite a lot.
So there's always in these debates something that you can pull out. I call it an arm bazooka and just blow me away. And it's usually around the score. I love every moment. This is
Oh,
one of
cool.
my go-to. I listen to this in the car. I actually listen to I've got this is going to really date me. I've got a compilation CD that I'll sometimes put on that is just like quiet Bond tunes. It's
Yeah.
only the quiet songs of all the Bond franchise that I can do like work and reports and like expense reports and things like that. So I'm not
Yeah.
distracted. And the Stacy theme, the love theme is definitely one of them. It's beautiful. I love it all. And I love the fact that Barry clearly took some of his older Bond moments and made that action tune
Mm.
because it's actually incorporated from other films pulled together. And I hear stories from like insiders that Barry had a lot of issues on this film putting the score together. He had a lot of issues with Duran Duran, but you would
Oh.
never know it. I love the score itself,
Mm.
and I love the fact that they put in, the song "View to a Kill" in a wonderful way into the score. They
Mm.
weave it perfectly in there, and I think they also use the score to serve what's happening on the screen
Mm.
really well. So I give it like a 9.5 out of 10
Oh,
if I was to
wow.
score. Yeah, if I was to score the score. I
Yeah.
love it.
Oh, cool. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, because I know this is kind of a polarizing one. I know people who
What
really.
don't they like about the soft parts?
I think it's because A View to a Kill is such like a striking pop song. And
Yeah.
I know people feel the same way about The Living Daylights as well. Like when that is slowed down into this romantic melody, I think people feel like that tune is not designed for that level of speed. I'm not a musician, I don't know the technical terms, but it seems to rub people up the wrong way. I think it's
Right.
really lovely. Like Bond meets Stacy, that track is just so lovely and calming. It's really like nice. This is like one of my go-to sort of like
Yeah.
relaxing Bond CDs. I really like it. And the title track is phenomenal as well. One of my favorites, of You to a Kill. It's I was watching the film. I've got like a surround sound set up in my living room, and just when that song comes on, like after the pre-title sequence, I love it so much. It's just like so striking, and the visuals in the title sequence, the Maurice Binder thing, I think it works so nicely as well.
And speaking of, and I know this has been a constant theme, the embracing of, that 1985 aspect of it,
Mm,
those sequence that he put together around the title is so 80s,
yeah.
with the blue light, the purple light and the lipsticks and things like that. I mean, it really does. It's very Stranger Things, it just gives you a wonderful nostalgic feel.
No, it really does.
And the song, have we talked about this song of You to a Kill? I mean, to me, it's just unbelievable.
Oh, it's awesome. No, it's terrific. It's one of my very favorites. It's so, yeah. No, yeah, no complaints from me.
Yeah,
It's
we're
terrific.
gonna be lockstep on that one. It's just amazing.
Okay, so the music is definitely an aspect of this film that you really
I
really
do.
gel with. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I do want to I want to kind of bring back some aspects around the plot. And I
Okay.
don't mean to hammer home, but I just find it fascinating. You probably know all this, but I know that Michael G. Wilson was a co-writer of this with Maybaum. And, the interesting thing that I found is they originally were going to use Halley's Comet because Halley's Comet was a big thing during this time. Do you know about this?
No, I don't know if I do.
Oh, oh, yay. Okay.
Yeah, you've
So
got new information for me.
fantastic. So they were going to do a plot around Halley's Comet and Halley's Comet coming by the Earth, and Zoran was going to be this maniacal character that could harness the power of Halley's Comet to interact with computer chips, almost like they did with a vampire film called Life Force during the mid 80s. And what was interesting about all this is that they kind of got rid of it. But then at the same point, this whole thing about causing an earthquake almost seemed like an exact replica of the Superman movie, Lex Luthor causing an earthquake around the San Andreas Fault to get land. And when they asked Michael G. Wilson about that, he said, "Oh, I forgot about that plot point." But to me, it's almost like, and I appreciate the writing partnership that went on here, but I can't help but feel like the plot is the undoing of this film.
Mm.
It's more than Moore's age. It's more than, any special effects, and it's even more than some of the stunt work where they weren't clean with, oh, that's clearly not Moore. I really feel like I have issue with the plot of this film. And for a guy that defends Quantum of Solace, that's saying something. So I just it falls as flat as ever. And unfortunately, I got to tell you, it falls I haven't seen No Time to Die, but it falls like 24 or 25 in my ranking.
Oh wow, I didn't realize it was that low. Because I know you love Roger Moore as well, so I'm yeah.
Love him.
Huh,
Love him,
that's
but
interesting.
I can't forgive, and I don't think it's him. Well, it's clearly not him. He doesn't write his movies.
Yeah.
He didn't write his movies. It's all that. And the only other thing I'll add to the plot thing is what was interesting is I think you and I, if you and I could go back into a time machine, and I know you love the 80s. If you were a good friend of mine in school in the 80s, I think you and I would be best friends. Um, they had a View to a Kill video games. You aware of these?
Oh, I know of them. I've never played any of them.
So I played one of them.
Yeah.
And if you get your hands on one or a playable version of it, you should. And I think there is one online you could play.
Yeah.
But there were two. There was one by written by I think Raymond Benson that was just a choose your own moment type. It was just text,
Yeah.
but well written, I heard. And then there was a View to a Kill 3-level game where you had to do like all these different things from the movie, and it got super high ratings, and it's unbelievably fun. The plot points of that video game are better than the movie. And
Wow.
that's saying something.
I need to play that game.
You will love that game. You need to review that game.
It's tough to disagree with any of that as well. Like, as a plot, it is super messy. Like, there are so many, as you mentioned earlier on, there are so many different tangents that don't quite go anywhere. It's a Goldfinger rehash.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe another couple of drafts would have maybe streamlined it down into something that was a bit more appealing. Like, certainly all that KGB stuff, like Gogol, I know that it's the 80s and it's the Cold War, and they probably feel like they need to have some kind of element of that in the film. You don't need it. You don't need Zorin to have been this ex-KGB agent, and then Polar Ivanova comes in and there's a whole tape mix-up thing. It's like, that is all very extraneous to what the main meat and potatoes of the thing is. So I do agree with that. At the same time, like, again, like, I think this goes back to my whole, like, this is kind of like a come around in the morning kind of film. I watch this with my cereal, Saturday morning cartoon, as you said.
Yeah.
I can kind of just go with it in this sort of, dare I say, James Bond Jr. sort of plotting sense, where it's not great like writing or great cinema, but I think it's entertaining. I do wish, like, my main wish about this film is that they would have lent more into the Bond being older aspect of it that we mentioned earlier on, particularly when it comes to the ending, because seeing Roger Moore and Tanya Roberts in the shower together and that being his kind of like final moment as Bond feels so
Creepy.
yeah, in a lot of ways.
And then Q watching them.
Yeah, it's a seedy end. Whereas you compare that with something like Octopussy, where I think that through that film, like, Octopussy ends with Bond in India with Octopussy, and they're kind of sailing back to her palace. Like, I would buy if that was the end of Roger Moore's Bond. Like, he might have like stayed with her in India on that island full of women, and she was kind of the one that he kind of settled down with. Maybe he'd do freelance missions for her here and there, but it feels like an ending for him. This doesn't. It feels kind of like, oh well, it's another adventure for Roger Moore, and I wish they'd have lent more into that, because he was clearly not going to be doing any more after this, and I just wish that they'd have tied it up a little bit in that way. But maybe we'll get that with Craig in No Time to Die.
That we can only hope, and then we can debate that.
Yes.
So not to push you into something, but where would you rank A View to a Kill?
It's probably somewhere around the middle. Like, I'm not one of the most staunch defenders of this film, but I certainly I get an awful lot out of it.
Unlucky 13, would you say?
Quite possibly. Yeah. 13, 14. I would, oh God, dare I say I would take it over, For Your Eyes Only, for instance. I would much rather watch this. Wow. I know it's terrible of me, but
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Right. We can explore that.
But it's still like way down. It's like 24, like
24 or 25.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm excited with the thought that I don't have to watch it again. But I enjoyed talking about it. I just living through it it can be painful sometimes. It's because you know what it is? It's that whole thing of like, a hamburger tastes delicious, but woe be that hamburger that you eat after you've had filet mignon. And I've
Right.
had filet mignon versions of the Bond movies. So like, hamburger's not bad, but it's like, it's not filet mignon.
Yeah.
So I always have weird analogies.
No, I love it. Well, do let us know in the comment section below where you stand on A View to a Kill. Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? Do let us know in the comment section below. And yeah, we'll be back with another one of these debate videos very soon.
Thanks, Calvin.
See ya.